Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Tuesday and happy New Year. This is a great event, Commissioner. I'm not sure if you realize it, but a year ago, February 6th, you did the exact same thing. And we had a similar turnout. So this has become a tradition. So thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend an hour with our members to talk about all things DEP. Before I do that, I want to thank our team, Kathy, Tareen, Julia, Jamie, and we have our newest staff member, Jeremy, on. I also want to thank our sponsors because we're proud of the fact to keep these virtual events free to our members. So I'm going to read them real quick. Archer, Commercial Solar Panel Recycling, Connell Foley, Continuing Professional Education Services, CSG, Davy Resource Group, Environmental. Oh, if I could ask everybody to mute themselves. Thank you. K&L Gates, Langen Engineering, Lowenstein Sandler, Offit Kerman, Peak Environmental, Pure Soil Technologies, Riker Danzig, Skank Price Smith King, Tetra Tech, TTI Environmental, UEG Consulting, Whitestone Associates, and finally Whitman. So again, I want to thank all of our sponsors. And again, I want to thank all of you for spending the day. So we're going to run it the same way we ran it last year, Commissioner. If that's okay, we could have a conversation. I can kind of throw out some items and then we can kind of talk about some specifics. Because of the turnout today, I'm going to ask everybody to use the chat box, and then my colleagues will monitor it, and we could ask questions that way. But feel free to jump in. We're going to start very high level and get into some of the weeds. So, Commissioner, again, Happy New Year. I guess we could start like we did last year. Priorities for 2025, realizing that this is the last year of the governor's administration. You've been in that position since January of 2021. I know you were confirmed in June of 2021. So you've had 4 years now at the helm. So, and thanks for everything you've done through the years. But high level priorities for this year, if you could just talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a number of things on the agenda of running through the tape, as my boss likes to say. It is important to him that despite the ongoing transitionary moment that we find ourselves in, both with new leadership at the federal level and a gubernatorial election taking shape here in the state, that we continue to keep our shoulders to the plow, as it were, and to continue to keep our shoulders. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Keep our shoulders to the plow, and that we not be distracted. That is the message coming out of our last cabinet meeting, by the transitionary moment, and continue to keep our collective feet on the accelerator. And so that is my plan here over the next 11 months and some days of the governor's remaining term. And that includes a continued focus on some key priority areas, continuing what has been a forceful approach to advancing environmental infrastructure investment, which folks here probably know is near and dear to my heart. I continue to serve as the national chair for infrastructure among all the state environment secretaries in the U.S. So expanding our water infrastructure investment plan, the reach of that plan. Last year, we were able to reach, for the first time, over $1 billion in projects facilitated through our water bank, which puts thousands and thousands of people to work. And at the same time, advancing multiple projects in both the shore protection space as well as the inland flood control project space. We've got a number of projects moving right now that we need to see continue to have a head of steam throughout the year. Again, leaning into what is good for the protection of public health and safety in the environment is also good for the bottom line, puts folks to work in those spaces. in a space that is a bit more distant from this group, but also incredibly important to the overall portfolio of DEP, as this, in our role as the state's sort of Department of the Interior. We have a number of improvement projects that are moving forward this year, including several steps on the Liberty State Park revitalization program. Going to be getting bids out in the early part of this year for priority projects to be developed at the northern end of Liberty State Park, which is just outstanding and near and dear to my heart personally. And then at the same time, we're going to begin construction of the first segment of the Greenway, which will be at 10 years from now when it's at the full build out between Jersey. It's the former rail line between Jersey City and Montclair that will become the state's 52nd state park. We'll build the first mile in Newark this year, and but at full build out will be New Jersey's version of the High Line, but better times 10, given its length. So those are incredibly important pieces of project-related work to advance, and I would think things that your membership may want to be attentive to, given the opportunities to engage with DEP from a contracting perspective. In addition to that, we have a number of regulatory matters, as you all are well aware of, to get across the line in this coming year. We have, as folks probably saw yesterday, the groundwater quality standards update was published in the Register. We've got a number of issues that are. Hold on just one moment. I'm sorry. That is my boss. Tell him to call him back. Apologies. The groundwater quality standards was adopted. We've got a number of rules that are in the proposal stage that are coming due for adoption this year, not the least of which is the Resilient Environments and Landscapes reform that we're working through comment response on now. As you know, there's the outstanding SERA rule proposal where public comment has closed, and we're reviewing public comments now to get that ready for adoption. We will propose the public access rules in the early part of this year, coming out of Senator Smith's law from 2020. Yes, it is 2025, but all of the reforms that we made under the Inland Flood Protection Rule and those coming in real, the sequence of those changes to the different parts of the code kind of made the public access requirements come later down the line. Nothing, I don't think, overly surprising in those rules. It's a codification of the terms of the law itself. I think the biggest thing there is the extension that the law worked into the flood hazard permitting context, and not just the CAFR permitting context. But I think we found a good balance in approaching that in a reasonable way, trying to add in degrees of flexibility and encourage the greater use of municipal public access plans, because that will help ease permitting pathways for regulated entities. So that remains to be, that is one of our priority rulemakings. We also have two other priority rulemakings in the water space that'll be proposed soon. Surface water quality standard updates are soon to be proposed, and that will include surface water quality standards for certain PFAS compounds, building on the work that we've done with the wastewater sector under our water quality strategy for PFAS, getting further down that line. For folks who are not attentive to that point of engagement with the wastewater sector, we've been collecting data from wastewater systems in order to analyze PFAS occurrence and help do track back of where major inputs into systems of PFAS loadings are coming from. So we'll continue down that road and get the surface water quality standards proposed, but then we'll also have the proposal of the New Jersey specific lead and copper rule. That's more drinking water system facing. So perhaps not as big an area of concern for this particular group, but definitely a point of labor that has been quite dynamic with the multiple changes at the federal level over the last several years. Every time the feds have changed something, we've had to change a huge back and forth. So this one has taken longer than I have wanted. But since we have primacy under the Safe Drinking Water Act, it remains an important dynamic for us to work through with the EPA.
So that was good, Commissioner. Thank you. A lot of upcoming rules. I was going to touch on a couple of them, but let's just go to, I guess, 3 weeks from today, the governor's going to deliver his budget address. I've already gotten some questions and emails now that President Trump is in office. Lee Zeldin, the new EPA administrator, was confirmed last week. He put a freeze on a lot of these grant programs and then he unfroze them. Is there anything you could share with us in terms of your, where you sit in terms of the dollars coming in at the federal level and what maybe you are going to expect in this year's state budget and staffing situation?
So with respect to the federal government, I'm going to expect that they keep their commitments, both as a matter of statutory requirements and as a matter of contractual agreement with DEP. Yes, last Monday we saw a freeze coming out of federal OMB. I'll spare you my reactions to the scope of that freeze, except to say that by Tuesday night we filed a lawsuit, and by Friday afternoon a judge ruled in our favor, and there is no freeze, or is not supposed to be a freeze. Whether a de facto freeze is being worked regardless is a question that remains before the courts. I think one of the things that's important for the regulated community to understand about the dynamic between the state and federal governments in this respect, you all know this well, right? I'm a former private practicing lawyer. Some among your membership were probably among my clients at one time or another. And the regulated community needs sufficiently resourced, reliable and consistent environmental governance apparatus in order to be able to plan its investments and to plan for what compliance with whatever the requirements in their relative spaces, in their respective spaces may be. The discord at the federal level does not serve business and industry, to my mind, because it creates a greater degree of a lack of reliability, a lack of availability. And so why should your membership be concerned about a federal freeze? Because the state, in particular New Jersey, in particular in this state, but all states have assumed responsibility to implement federal law. And in order to fund the pursuit of those programs and their implementation, the federal government pays us under agreement in order to carry those responsibilities. New Jersey has maximal assumption. And so what does that mean? If there is a reduction in the amount of funding that the federal government sends our way, then there is an unavoidable impact upon the ability to serve the compliance needs of the regulated community, right? Permits, backlogs get longer, and we are less available as a function of staffing resources that are federally funded. There's no question. Thankfully, that at least according to the court, shouldn't be happening. There's always questions to be asked in federal budget making about what the scope of support for state implementation of environmental programs is or should be. And I will tell you that across this country, leaders of environmental governance entities or agencies rather, on a bipartisan basis, stand before Congress regularly and explain that this very principle and why those funding streams need to be not just maintained, but improved upon. And that is, doesn't matter, how you vote or who your governor is, we make the same argument and we do it together, New Jersey and Texas, hand in hand in that respect. And I think one of the things that is often a lack of appreciation in our state budget making process is the need for, if what we're seeking is expediency and maximizing efficiencies, greater uses of technology, we have to adequately fund those things. They don't happen by themselves, right? And so, I would suspect that you all in the course of the budget, the state budget making process will be advocating for what you think are the appropriate resources for DEP. As you know, my predecessor, who I served for several years, was fond of saying that DEP is 2/3 the size it needs to be to do the job it has, and that job does keep getting larger thanks to our legislature. And so we need to look at it that way. All that said, the governor hasn't been shy about saying this is going to be a hard budget. The agencies were asked to deliver cuts, not growth, and I follow instructions.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. One of the things, you kind of hit it on the head with staffing, if you have any changes, obviously, can we assume that depending on the source of who's going to fund that position, that hiring is going to happen, or it really just depends on what happens with the state budget?
Well, right now, the state, in the lead up to the budget making process, the governor did put the agencies on a hiring freeze. And so we are on a hiring freeze right now. And it is not yet clear when that freeze will lift. And so that's the position that we find ourselves at this particular moment. I think the attrition numbers are really interesting when you look across DEP. And when we look over the last 10 years in particular, versus beyond that time, and the old adage of the public servant remaining with their agency for decades, it is slipping away. There's no question. By at least 50, I would say 50%, are not with us after 10 years. The numbers of how we maintain the interest and engagement of staff during those 10 years is terrific. For folks in the first 5 years, there's like above an 85% retention rate, right? But the workforce is more mobile. And I think as a matter of budget making, we need to be conscious of that, and not assume that every new employee is an add to the long-term pension obligations of the state. I think that's an important reflection that needs to be evaluated in this budget.
Commissioner, I'm going to PFAS, you hit on it. I was surprised, and maybe not surprised, but the level of, I guess, the questions when I heard the Lee Zeldin public hearings, that there's a lot of attention nationally on PFAS. Obviously, New Jersey has been involved. I know Senator Greenstein authored, sponsored some bills, but you mentioned that, on the surface water side, we could see some PFAS standards. Anything else around PFAS that we should be aware of for the year?
Yeah, so yeah, a couple of things. So we'll put out a PFAS roadmap, if you will, that reflects on the work to date, the work that DEP has done to date on the topic across media areas and science and research areas as well. So that will be a point of reflection, and then explaining where we believe we need to go. That we'll put that out later this month. And then we're going to hold a PFAS summit by the middle of the year. So I'd say stay tuned for that. And we'll, after the strategy document comes out, we'll be in touch with your organization, Tony, probably some of your members, and we'll want to bring multiple sectors together to explore the issues. So I think that'll be a point that is enlightening. And I think will be informative to the legislature as well. There has been a lot that DEP has advanced in this space that I think maybe the legislative members are not as not that steeped in. And I think this document will serve that purpose of informing them better as well. A legislator wants to legislate, and I get it. But we sort of, let's be conscious of where we are, what's been done, what science we believe is necessary. And let's look around the country at what other states have done from a perspective of PFAS management and products, and learn from some of those lessons, and not put the cart before the horse, if you will.
Gotcha.
We've been doing environmental management for decades. There's a way that this works, and you're not going to solve all the problems at once.
And you said the summit would happen summer?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to pivot to the Site Remediation Reform Act amendments. Comment period closed last Friday. Thank you for the extension. Back in December, when the business groups all met with you, I think the one issue that came up to the top, there's a lot of other issues that obviously I won't get into, but the one that caught everyone off guard is the change in the public notification of when you call the hotline, right? So anybody that discovers it needs to call it in. And I think you had an appreciation, I guess, back in December, that of the legislative intent. You're going to get a lot of comments. We submitted our comments, but now that the comment period has closed, because you really were prohibited from really talking about it in December, is there anything you could share? Because we did engage Senator Smith on it, and he probably weighed in as well, saying that the intent should be with the property owner and the property owner's designee. And this is when you discover contamination and you have to call it into the hotline. Yeah.
So I haven't been through all of the comments yet, but I do understand that I do understand the interest around having a discussion about this, and hearing for folks that are engaged in this space to hear my perspectives on it, and for me to hear yours. And so I will pursue that with you all. I don't know that this particular space is the best best place to do that. I think what is really I think important to reflect on is the impact that unreported discharges has. And I think that point of visibility is one that we can provide and have that can inform the discussion a bit more. The overarching goal here is to not perpetuate circumstances where discharges are unreported and that as a function of that, they become a continuing source of impact that could be well controlled and potentially publicly funded. And that pipeline into the publicly funded program is necessarily incomplete due to a lack of reporting. And so that is a gap we need to close. And I am happy to have conversation about the best way to do it.
Thanks, Commissioner. I received a question about the grant money, and I'm not sure if it was a state grant or a federal grant, but I think the question still applies. The grant had language in it about DE&I initiatives, and obviously President Trump is rolling a lot of that back. I'm not sure. One of our colleges submitted a grant application last November. She's asking whether or not there's been any changes with the DE&I component of the grants, both at the state and federal level, if you can comment.
I think it's important to not get too excited about executive orders, because there are statutory requirements that prohibit discrimination. And typically what is required in a grant agreement is not about DEI, but rather about non-discrimination. And I think these concepts are getting conflated. And from from both a perspective of someone who is required to comply with federal civil rights and state civil rights law, much like any member of the business and industry community is required to comply. I think having that appreciation of the distinction between what is a human resources and community building theory and what is a legal requirement of non-discrimination. I would think that that grant agreements have requirements for non-discrimination, not for human resources and community building. And it's upon the DEP in our grant agreements, to make sure that the non-discrimination requirements are fulfilled, because we owe that point of compliance as a state to the federal government. And we'll continue to pursue those because we are legally bound to do so.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to switch to one of my favorite subjects, dirty dirt. And I know you and Katrina were kind enough to give us a heads up about the rules out draft. So I know you're limited as to what you could say. We had a very lengthy meeting yesterday with some stakeholders. We read through it. What concerns me, Commissioner, is after reading it, working on this for 2 or 3 years, I still think you're going to get a lot of people that really aren't the intent of the A901 license caught in this web. Unfortunately, even with the rule as it's proposed, for example, if you decide to file that certification and say, I'm handling soil that's not regulated, a lot of questions. What do you sample for? How long do you keep the records? What happens if 2 developers after you come in and put more dirt in? Somebody questions it. The enforcement side of the rule proposal is really what we question. But also, and I know one of our members went through this a couple of years ago, but to get that A901 license, if you're an employee stock ownership program, ESOPs, and you have 40 employees, they're all key employees. The definitions change to say, by the way, we're going to look at every family member, including your cousins. And I made the joke last week that I have 26 first cousins. So you could see, is like, this could really, if you have to apply for the A901, it's the Attorney General's office, it's the state police, it's the DEP. I just think it's broader than what the legislative intent is. Again, full transparency. I've been working with Senator Smith on this since day one. He did say, Tony, please keep me apprised of what you guys think. And I still don't think, Commissioner, with all due respect, that I think it's going to create more problems. So we'll comment. We'll probably ask for an extension. I don't know if you can grant an extension verbally today, but 60-day comment period ends, I think, March 22nd. So, but we're going to need more time to kind of go through the enforcement side of that.
Sure.
I do think it's going to capture more people than I think the intent was.
And I can appreciate that. And I very much invite the comments. I'll talk to the team about an extension.
Okay.
As you know, it is not my intent to be over-inclusive, so those comments are helpful. But I should leave my statements about it there for now.
Understood.
But thank you for
Yeah,
pointing that out.
we'll point out some other issues. Sticking with, I guess, let me go to air real quick. And again, this was the advanced California truck rule that went into effect last month. And maybe you could just clarify, the way I understood it is dealerships now need to make available all electric trucks starting this month, but companies are not mandated to buy those trucks. And again, I think one of our coalition members met with the governor's front office last week. I guess the administration's not in favor of delaying this rule, the implementation for another couple of years. Okay.
No.
Can you maybe explain to our companies that have fleets,
So
when they would
first,
have to buy an electric truck?
They don't. They don't have to buy electric trucks. The dealerships do need to offer them for sale, right? The dealerships do not need to offer them for sale. It's the manufacturers that need to offer them for sale. What is occurring is the manufacturers are leveraging the relationships with the dealers and ratioing the dealers, or what they call ratioing the dealers, and telling the dealers, if you want this many diesel trucks, you need to buy this many electric trucks. Nothing in the rule mandates that. It is what the manufacturers are, the way the manufacturers are approaching it as a matter of their business relationships with the dealers. But nothing about the rule itself requires the dealers to purchase, and nothing about the rule requires an individual company to make a purchase. Where companies are interested in making purchases of electric trucks, the state offers financial assistance to pay the difference between the cost of the electric and diesel models, right? That assistance is offered through the EDA for businesses and through the DEP for local governments. What the dealers are experiencing is a function of the manufacturers. There's not a better way to describe it than being cute. We've been engaging with the manufacturers to clarify what the rule requires and does not require, and we're engaging with the other states on that prospect on that same issue. The other states that have ACT together in the dialogue back and forth with the manufacturers. The reason not to delay the rule is that this is a manufacturing obligation that they have to meet or be penalized, right? And so there is a compliance period that effectively creates the delay being sought, because the compliance period extends over multiple years. And at the same time, the delay doesn't really get you anything, right? There's a perception that it would, but delaying the implementation of it by 2 years, you effectively have the same compliance flexibility within the rule as it exists. So I think those are the reasons why the front office is not entertaining the issue.
Understood. But I appreciate the clarification, because one of our companies that owns trucks, they thought they had to start buying them this year.
No, there is, I think, a degree of confusion potentially, as sometimes happens, unfortunately, confusion that is purposefully sown. But there is a distinction between the Advanced Clean Trucks rule, which is a manufacturer requirement, and the Advanced Clean Fleets rule, which New Jersey does not have. The Advanced Clean Fleets rule is the rule that says to fleet owners over a certain number, at the end of a useful life of a vehicle, replace it with the clean alternative. But there is no direct fleet owner rule in our state.
Gotcha. I'm going to
I
stick
think
with you.
only California has that rule at this point. I think.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Sticking with energy, climate change, right? And I know the PACT rule is out there. I guess the question, and I was at the State of the State where the governor is asking the legislature to codify his energy goals, right, by 2035, all EV. There's still a lot of range anxiety out there, infrastructure upgrades that are needed. Anything that you could share with us on a regulatory side, what we could expect this year? Because obviously President Trump, now Lee Zeldin as the administrator, they talked about energy. It's probably going to be one of their top priorities. I guess a couple of questions. One is, at what point do you think, are you going to reach out to the EPA just to start the dialogue? How is that going to work? And more importantly, at the state level, what happens from a regulatory perspective on energy?
Yeah. So I guess the first important point is that neither the EPA nor the DEP is an energy regulator. So there's that. So I'm not entirely clear yet on what the EPA will think it's doing in the space of energy production, but we'll find that out. The points of engagement with EPA is already underway. I'm on the board of the Environmental Council of the States, and we, as a board, we engage routinely with EPA on issues of bipartisan concern. We've made our initial overture to the Trump administration and to Administrator Zeldin, and I will be in DC multiple times this month and next month to pursue that relationship, which is a relationship we have despite who is president and despite who is the administrator. And again, it is sought on a bipartisan basis with states of varying stripe. So, I think, what are the immediate implications of some of the policy or directional statements we're hearing out of the White House? I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head, in part because, as you all know, New Jersey has a long, strong, proud, and bipartisan history of going above and beyond the federal baseline standard. We were above the federal baseline standards in almost every program under every single president, including this one, his first go round, and including the last one. So I think that you can expect that to continue, because that has always been our state's trajectory. With respect to the implications for electric vehicle adoption, all of our programs remain in place at the state level, and they will continue to remain in place. And we're going to expect that all the agreements we have for federal funding that was promised New Jersey will be honored, because, well, there's both statutory requirements and contractual agreements with the federal government for that. And so what does that mean? It means that our infrastructure will continue to be built out. I understand that there's range anxiety. I'm not sure how many people joining us today drive an EV. I do, and have for only a year and a half. I don't have range anxiety, but it's a behavioral change. That, only once you sort of get into the game do you see where all the charging stations are, and they don't smack you in the face like a gas station does. But we'll continue to build out that network. We've already surpassed the goals that were set for 2025 in our electric vehicle law in terms of chargers deployed. And we'll continue to do that. And on medium and heavy duty in particular, we're creating a charging corridor with several other states that will be specifically and separately accessible for medium and heavy duty.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate everything you said, and I should have mentioned that the Board of Public Utility weighs in the legislature. Obviously, we saw the news about wind. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to comment about the wind projects. I mean, it seems like there's a couple of setbacks, I guess. Is there anything you want to say about wind?
I think like, it's not my, it's not my area of jurisdiction from an energy procurement perspective, but I've been in the government world and the business world before that, and industries experience setbacks, and you're clearly seeing one over the last several years, ever since the pandemic, in the offshore wind industry. It will right itself in over time. I don't think that there's a question about that in the long term. I think where the real difficulty comes in, and as it relates to the decisions that were the decision announced yesterday, is that in order for any industry, particularly one that it is in its formative stages, in order for that industry to be successful and plan its investments and its strategy, there needs to be a reliable and predictable system of governance. And as of 2 weeks ago, at least on the federal level, that what was perceived as a reliable system of governance in this industry in particular, it has been now subject to complete and utter chaos. And so that leads industry to make decisions over how they're gonna pursue the course that they've set. And you see some take Total Energies out of France. Right? So they're saying we're going to just take a back seat on being a venture capital partner to wind projects over the next couple of years, because we can't trust this this new apparatus at the federal level. Look, that was a perspective at the beginning of the first Trump administration that worked itself out by the second half of the first Trump term, and maybe that'll be the case now as well. Yeah, we just don't know.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Commissioner. We have about 14 minutes left, so a reminder, if you have a question, put it in the chat box. I have a couple here, Commissioner. Real quick, the $120 million Meadowlands flood resilience project, this is the rebuild by design. Can you give an update on the pumping stations and dredging of the East Riser Ditch through Teterboro and Moonachie?
I keep every pump station and ditch improvement project that we fund in the front of my brain. And so I absolutely have that at the ready to respond. No, I'm joking. I don't know off the top of my head. We did just approve an additional infusion of funding into the RBD programs, which were falling a bit short, in part as a reflection of inflationary pressures, but I can get an answer to that more discreet question about what the completion date is. I think we just infused another $40 million into it.
All right, thank you. Going back to dirty dirt, with the hiring freeze this year, if the department, I guess, and again we could talk offline, but would you be opposed? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will. And this is something, obviously, the answer is probably we're going to have to see the details. But if the legislature is willing to open it up, the law again, just to kind of clarify, who gets the A901, would the administration go along with some amendments just to make sure we're not capturing anybody? That wasn't the intent. Again, this is a staff and resources on your end too, right? In terms of processing the application. So if the legislature decides, and you know what? It was passed in 2019. We get it. It was the SCI report. We want to take organized crime out of the dirt business, which everybody supports. But I think the unintended consequences here are pretty significant. So, and again, I'm putting you on the spot, but obviously you don't have to
Yeah,
give
I
me.
mean, let's go through the discrete unintended consequences as opposed to the theorized parade of horribles,
Sure.
and then we can answer that question.
Okay. And
I
we'll
think
definitely
I think
follow
we
up.
need to. I think that is a worthwhile. That is a worthwhile exercise, and I suggest it from the perspective of comment making too on this or anything else. The more concrete, the more as applied a comment is, the better we can do in addressing it, and potentially, perhaps what folks see as a need to be addressed can be addressed as a substantive change without a legislative change, which could be faster, right? I'm a fan of expediency, recognizing that this particular process has not been one. But we did, from a resource perspective, in the last budget, we did get an additional tranche of FTEs in order to support the program. Now, the question of hiring into it is a different question.
No, and we'll follow up, Commissioner. Thank you. I just want to get to a couple other issues here real quick. And I know they're on the call, but commercial solar panel recycling, I want to thank you, Paul, and your team for issuing the first RD&D permit. We're going to invite you to a ribbon cutting later this year. We're excited about it, and they're on the call today. First facility that's going to accept solar panels that need to be recycled.
Super cool.
Thank you for that. We'll also have to follow up because there is, again, some trepidation on, whether these panels are hazardous or not, which could create an obstacle. So we'll talk about that later. NRD, or Natural Resource Restoration. I guess we submitted an applicant to be considered for your advisory council. The question here is, should we anticipate that the department and the Attorney General's office will continue to file NRD and EJ lawsuits this year? And if you could just comment on the status of appointing your advisory council.
The advisory council will be seated this month. So look out for an announcement on that from Assistant Commissioner Dragon. My perspective on natural resource restoration is that no one should await a lawsuit. When you are in the process of remediating a contaminated site, come and have a chat and address that liability on the front end. That is, I think, an important point that I couldn't drive home enough. If you look at the course of the lawsuits that have been filed over the last several years, they tend to be on matters of that have lingered for some time, and let's not wait to be in that position, and instead address the natural resource restoration obligation on the front end. And so we're going to be rolling out a little bit of a toolkit that will better, I think, assist the regulated community in making that voluntary approach. It's a voluntary one, right? The council, of course, has nothing to do with the pursuit of natural resource injury claims. The council will help to establish and engage the public on building an inventory of restoration need for both investment of monetary recoveries and to help inform the regulated community about where restoration opportunities are.
Good. Thank you for that. Another question. Can you provide an update, the status of the department's remediation process improvement initiative? And will this continue or sunset now that the SARA rules are out?
Now, I am a believer in continuous process improvement, and we've started down that road. Some of the feedback that that I've heard directly on that process has been, it's a great start and needs to go a little bit further. The universe of matters that are subject to that would be captured under some of the new forms for sort of certifying to the fast track for remedial action permits. There's a reflection that maybe that needs to be broadened. And so the team is evaluating that and will continue to do so. And so you can consider it an ongoing initiative.
Thank you. Another question here, high level, and I'm not sure what this is, but any bipartisan conversations between the Murphy administration and Congress as to the possibility of joining in the attempts to repeal IRA or ILLJA funding? Does that make sense? I don't know what that means, but.
So that is the Inflation Reduction Act
Okay.
and the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Gotcha.
There has already been an approach to Congress to put them on notice of our interests as a state in seeing that those two statutes are preserved, given the deep import of them to many in our business community, as well as to public entities that have benefited from the infusion of federal funding promised under those laws. Now, under the bipartisan infrastructure law in particular, you've got effectively 2 more years of the funding under that law. And that funding has been committed to projects all across the country, from bridges and tunnels and airports to new water treatment plants. And so pulling back on that would be devastating to the proponents of those projects and the engineering firms and construction firms that have committed to them. That would be deeply problematic. The Inflation Reduction Act, similar things can be said about it. And you can count on us to advocate for the fulfillment of those laws.
Thank you, Commissioner. We have 4 minutes to go. Any other questions, comments that somebody wants to ask? You put it in a chat box. You could unmute yourself.
On that last point, Tony, I would say for your members who are concerned about the Bipartisan Inflation Reduction Act and the benefits that have flowed to your membership, it would be great to hear some of the discrete examples. I know many of them myself, but if there's a 2-pager that CIANJ wanted to put together, as I make my way down to advocate for these things on the Hill over the next 2 months, I'll be happy to share those stories.
I'll collect them. I could tell you one that happened last year. One of our big healthcare systems actually received quite a bit of money to put solar panels on. So,
yep.
Yeah, this is I'll definitely circle back. If you can indulge us, Commissioner, just our sponsors want to say hi real quick. And
Absolutely.
I'm going to add,
of course,
real quick, and I'm going to start and keep it short. Anybody from Archer want to say hi? I'm going to go down the line. Commercial solar panel. I don't know if Sarah or Glenn, you're on the line.
I said that already. I think it
Yeah, I'm on the line. So just thanks a lot for being a supporter of solar panel recycling and keeping green energy out of landfills.
Thank you, Sarah. Connell Foley.
Thank you.
Discussions with them for the give and take.
Can you mute yourself? Connell Foley. George Berkowitz, Continuing Professional Education Services. George. You have to unmute yourself, George.
Yeah, never pass an opportunity to say something. Thank you, Commissioner. Yeoman's job that you have. At some point off the record, I'd like to talk to you about making sure that your professional organization, which is highly technical, maintains their acumen. I'd like to have that discussion with you at some point.
happily would invite that, George. Thank you.
Thank you, George. CSG, our friends from Dennis.
Commissioner, thank you for doing this. We appreciate your time and appreciate all the information. And let's keep getting those federal monies flowing to New Jersey.
Thank you, Dennis.
I'll keep beating the drum.
Resource
Thanks,
Group.
Dennis.
Anyone
Thank
from-
you, Commissioner. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Who's our environmental?
Thanks, Bill.
Commissioner, thank you. It's Nick Huzzer. Always appreciate the transparency.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
K&L Gates.
Brian Montag, thank you, Commissioner. Really appreciate all the information. And we always appreciate the ability for you to have a dialogue with us. Even if we can't always agree, the ability to sit down and discuss issues is very important to us. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Brian.
And to me as well.
Langen.
Thank you, Brian.
Anybody from Langen?
Hi, yeah, it's Scott Bisport from Langen. Just thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate your time today.
Thanks,
Thank
Brian.
you. Lowenstein Sandler. I'm going to keep going. Alfred Kerman.
I'm Matthew Carmel from Offer Kerman. Just thank you, Commissioner, for your leadership. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks, Matt.
Peak
Good to see you.
Environmental.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Jeff Campbell from Peak Environmental. Yeah, just a quick thank you to the commissioner for his time today. Very informative.
Thank you, Jeff. Michelle at Pure Soil.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. This is Michelle Zalizi with Pure Soil and the Earl Companies. Commissioner, thank you very much. This was extremely insightful, and we're looking forward to the regulated community as well as our municipalities on what you're doing moving forward in the year. So thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Riker Danzig. I think I saw Steve.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate your commitment to New Jersey's environment and its interests. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Steve. Good to see you.
Genk Price. I know I saw Heidi.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you for your time. We appreciate the department considering the effect of their actions on business in the community.
Thank you, Heidi. Tetra Tech.
Hey, Commissioner Joe Purse, Tetra Tech. Thank you very much for taking the time. It was very informative.
Thank you, Joe. TTI Environmental. Anybody on from TTI? Okay. UEG. I think I saw Eric White.
Yes. Hi, Eric White from UEG. I'd like to echo everybody else. Thank you very much for your availability and taking the time today.
Thank you.
Sir.
Whitestone Associates. Anybody? And then finally, Whitman. Anybody from Whitman?
Hi, Tony. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. It's been very informative, and we appreciate you sharing the information with us.
Wow. So we went through 20 sponsors, and it's 10:01, Commissioner. So on behalf of all of us here at CIANJ, thank you for spending an hour. There's a lot of things to follow up on. I want to thank everybody for being on the call today. Stay safe, and we'll see you at our next event. So thanks, everybody.
Much appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Don't forget that this year is the 55th anniversary of Earth Day. We're going to throw a big party, and we're going to be in touch about it.
Love it. And we also have our Innovation Awards, April 22nd at Nanina's in the Park. Send in your nominations. Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks,
We'll be in
everybody.
touch.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Tony, thanks, Commissioner.